So first of all, an apology because this video is long overdue. My office studio refurb is pretty much done now. It's been an awful lot of work, but it's been overdue an update. So in this video I'm going to show how I made a DIY lighting gantry system for my home office studio. Hi, it's Dave T here, and if you've ever tried to do any kind of videoing indoors, at home or anywhere else, then you'll know that one of the biggest issues is lighting, and you generally have to add additional lights. This usually means putting the lights fairly high, looking down on the subject, which means using light stands, which clutters the floor. It's stuff to get out and put back again afterwards. Generally hassle. Previously, I had actually mounted curtain poles on the ceiling. This sort of worked, but it meant you couldn't quite put the lights in exactly the right position, so it wasn't perfect. It looked unsightly. So when I was refurbing the office, one of the main things I wanted to do was get a gantry system to be able to slide lights to more or less anywhere on the ceiling to have the kind of ultimate in control, and also try and tidy it up a bit. So I did look around for some off-the-shelf systems. I found several, but most of them needed a fair bit of kind of height between the ceiling and where the light would mount as part of how those systems worked. I wanted it low profile because I haven't got particularly high ceilings here. So after looking around, I actually found a company called KJN Aluminium Profiles. It's a UK-based company who make a range of aluminium products for making anything from specialist benches through to aquarium stands. So after doing some design work, I came up with a design for a 2 gantry kind of beam system for the office, ordered a load of parts, waited for them to arrive, and then it was time to crack on, and let's see what happened. So the next step is going to be to make the gantry plates, which are the kind of union, the joint between the side rails fixed to the ceiling and the crossbar. And these are basically just a couple of sliders, but it's a little bit more complex than you might think. So let me explain. I'll just clear the bench off. This system is going to be 2 rails stuck to the ceiling down either side, and then a couple of beams across on sliders. Now the issue is that if my walls aren't exactly parallel, or if when I'm trying to fix the rails up I don't get them absolutely parallel, then as the beam slides along, the distance is going to get longer, and therefore if I fix the beam straight from one rail to the other, then it's obviously either going to be trying to be stretching or compressing, which isn't going to work, and it's going to seize up. But also, as I pull the beam along the track, I may not pull it absolutely square. That's another issue, because obviously that could make it seize up. So I've come up with a system using 2 sliders at each end, one to slide along the rail and the other to allow the cross beam some tolerance where it can slide kind of side to side effectively, which will hopefully stop it from jamming. And also I'm going to engineer it so that there's some swing on the beam. I'm actually going to do that just by drilling the holes for fixing them. They need to be 5mm holes for the 5mm bolts, and I'm going to drill the other ones as kind of like 7 and then 10 or something like that, and that will basically allow the cross sliders to swing. Don't worry, it'll all come together when I start making it, hopefully. So let's get on and actually make up some of these plates and see how it works. I remember learning to do this at school about 35 years ago probably. So this is how it would normally work, sliding along this way, and then the crossbar, which would then be this, and this, you can see that can rotate just a couple of degrees, but that couple of degrees over 3 meter span of the crossbar, that adds up to well, I'll put the calculations in the corner, but I think it's like 7 or 8 inches. So I'd have to be almost deliberately making it pull at an angle before I hit that limit. The spar itself, if the walls are further apart, then this can come in and out slightly. If I pull it at an angle, which would also mean the spar is then shorter because it's going across, then again that slider would help there, and this one here, the beam, will be the rail going that way. So what I need to do now is to fit 2 of these rails to the ceiling. Okay, so while he gets on with the hard work in there, fixing the rails, I'm going to actually explain how it's going to work in terms of fixing the whole rails to the ceiling. So basically what I did was I purchased these, I guess you call them like Z brackets from Amazon, and they will allow me to fix the rail to the ceiling, but more to the point, stand it off from the ceiling by about 10-12 mil or something like that. I need to do that because it means that the cross rail, the crossbar, will be low enough down to clear the new LED panel for the room light. In terms of fixing the Z brackets to the ceiling, they'll just be screwed to the beams. To fix the rails to the Z brackets, fortunately, almost on a whim, I actually purchased these T-bolts. Now these T-bolts are specially designed for the aluminium section, so they'll slot into the section anywhere along it, and then they'll turn, but only 90 degrees. That means you can then put a nut on it, but you can tighten the nut without the bolt then just spinning. So with that done, let's head back in and see how it's getting on with the rest of the project. This is the point of no return for this crossbar at least. This lighting track has a terminal block on that end, and then inside it's got 3 copper tracks, and you get modules which slot into this. So you put it on there, turn it, it engages on the 3 different tracks. Now this is designed for 240 volt, but you can use it for lower voltage. The lights are from memory 16 volts. The idea of this, I'm going to bolt this to one of these crossbars. I'll do that using, I actually made, rather than those T-bolts, 3D printer. If you're ever into doing weird stuff like this in terms of home DIY and engineering, buy yourself a 3D printer, because I've made, I'll get a close up in a minute, these little wedge shapes which fit into the channel on the beams, which I can effectively self-tap bolt into that to hold this bar. So basically the idea will be I'll have this bar bolted to the crossbar and then wired up at one end, which will basically mean all along that bar I can have an access point for power. I've actually now been using the lighting gantry for a couple of weeks and have had the chance to film several studio parts using them. So what's the conclusion? Well, firstly, in terms of the general appearance, whilst probably not everyone's cup of tea, I quite like them, and they certainly look far neater than the previous setup. Mechanically, I did have one particular design issue with the sliding mechanism. This was that despite my kind of rotating slider plate design, the rail still can jam when pulling it unevenly along the wall, so if you get the balance incorrect that way. This was mostly remedied just by simply applying some grease to the side rails, and so it's not really a major issue. In retrospect, I would probably make the sliding plates longer with two sliders, two of those 4-inch sliders instead of one. This would, I think, stop the slider from being able to twist in the channel to the point where it can jam. Having said that, I do like the fact that with the short slider panels, the racks can kind of stack up close to the end walls and it doesn't stick often enough to cause a problem. In terms of positioning lights and other items such as microphones, it is without doubt much better. I can now position lights pretty much to the optimum position wherever I'm filming in this office. Also, using a shotgun mic suspended on a selfie pole like I am now gets a much better audio, and perhaps more importantly, it seems to be more reliable than when I was using lav mics before, because you could get noise from clothing and other issues. These are not easy to detect when filming solo, so having just a shotgun mic, which is much simpler and kind of what you see is what you get consistently, is a much better option. I do actually connect the microphone to the camera over there with a wireless transmitter, so there's less cables. If you're going to do that, you do need to make sure you avoid having the transmitter too close to the microphone, otherwise it can cause some buzzing noise. My 3D printer did come in useful once again on this project. I 3D printed these custom wall brackets to hold the rail ends against the wall where there were no ceiling joists. Meanwhile, these clip covers made the ceiling fittings much tidier. I also made some blocks with 1/4-inch holes for attaching other items to the rails and cable clips to keep the wires tidy. And of course, as shown in the video, I made some hidden fixings for attaching the power strip. Now for the power system, I actually tried two approaches. The power strip as I showed in the video, and also I simply soldered some sockets, the right size for the light connectors, in parallel along some wires, kind of like a built-in extension lead, and used those for the second track. And I 3D printed these little mini brackets to hold them onto the track. Both of those work. The power track is neater, but obviously limited to one light. I'm not sure I would get away with running two lights because it'd be effectively running from the same power pack. Neither of them obviously is absolutely perfect, but they're both better than just kind of hanging cables using tie wraps or something along the gantries. The untidiest part at the moment is actually the mains power delivery, which is along the tall wall up here, where I have to get the mains power to the actual crossbars, and to do that I've got 240 volts running across there. I've mounted the power bricks to the actual top of the tall wall, but generally it's a bit kind of untidy. They're fairly hefty cables, or just standard mains cables, so when you're pulling the gantries along, that can knock other things off of the shelves. The simplest solution to this is going to be to buy another one of those power tracks, and this time use it for 240 volt power. I'm still considering that, and we'll let you know in the comments if I decide to go down that route. I haven't tried attaching a camera to the rails yet. I'm sure I will do at some point. They are strong enough, but there is some movement, so if you're using this sort of system, you do need to have some care that you don't bump the camera, because otherwise it will kind of waggle a bit. Overall, I'm really pleased with how this worked out. The rails and other components from KJN were just over £200, which is certainly not cheap, but a lot less than most of the other purpose-built products I looked at. Perhaps most importantly, it was fun to build something unique that matched my exact requirements. I hope you found this video interesting or helpful, and if you have, then please do hit that like button. And if you're interested in seeing the rest of my series on refurbishing my office come home studio, then please do consider subscribing to my channel. But most of all, thanks for watching.